What's up, guys? Welcome to the Bro Force Squad podcast. What we're doing today is a very special episode. I like to call them quick lifts. We're just going to get in one quick pump. Again, a full set. Just bring the bar down, bring it up. You're cheating yourself if you don't do that. Today we're talking about the new HBO show, Westworld. Some of you might have heard of it. It only had about 1 trillion people watch it. I am your host, Jeff Hornacek. Along with me today is my partner in crime, Alex English. Alex, before we get started, you were actually the one who basically told me if I don't watch this show that I might as well lose your phone number because we wouldn't be friends anymore. I just want to say thank you for turning me on to this. In the pilot episode, obviously, I was pretty pumped that I got to partake in it.
Well, I'm glad you took my advice and actually watched it. We needed to have at least two of the bros talking about this. I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty huge thing for HBO. First time I heard about it was when I was watching, obviously, Game of Thrones this past season, and they started putting out trailers for it right before the new episode of Game of Thrones would start playing.
Which is usually a good time to get a trailer in front of some eyeballs.
Yeah, there's 15 million people watching this? Maybe, yeah. And it was from right away they started, Jonathan Nolan, J.J. Abrams. Oh, it has Anthony Hopkins. Can he act?
Has he acted well previously? Yeah.
Oh, Evan Rachel Wood. And I'm just like, what is this, And I started kind of doing a little bit of research on it and basically started a countdown clock on my phone to the premiere date. And
that is
safe
awesome.
to say, I really enjoyed the pilot episode. It was probably one of the best pilots I've ever seen.
So I think before we dive into it, obviously this is a spoilers review of the pilot episode of the show Westworld. Basically, if you saw it, you want to get our take on it, which we're just a couple bros that are really just kind of here to exercise really just get these muscles flexed after we saw the show. If you don't work out a muscle, it doesn't grow. So it's a spoilers review, but basically the thing that had me most intrigued about this show is, I guess, twofold. Number one, you said that the creative minds of Jonathan Nolan, whose brother Christopher Nolan you may have heard of. He's done a few small films, like mostly art-type pictures. And, of course, J.J. Abrams were behind it. But second off, like you're saying, HBO, in terms of television, have had very few missteps in the last decade or so. And the stuff that has been successful has been incredibly successful. So that alone, you have to at least give a show like this the pilot episode to see if it wows you.
Yeah, and they threw, they pretty much threw the kitchen sink at this show. I think I read the budget is somewhere around $100 million, and that's for 10 episodes. This isn't like a 20-episode drama that they're putting out there. And there were reports that the pilot, which ran like 79 minutes, which, by the way, I felt like it was about 45. I think when I told you about it, I was like, yeah, no, it was about 45 minutes long. And then you're like, oh, I just started this. It's like midnight. I'm probably going to watch it tomorrow because it actually was 79 minutes long. But apparently the pilot was something like 20 million just for like an hour and 15 minutes of TV, which is nuts. But it looked that way.
And by the way, that is the highest compliment you can possibly pay a show. Like,
right.
It's the exact opposite of like if your girlfriend says, "Oh, you lasted a really long time in bed last night," when you didn't. To say that a show felt really short when it wasn't is the highest compliment.
For sure.
So we'll just dive right into it. For those of you obviously who saw the show, it is an out there premise. It blends the Western genre, which our last review we just did, The Magnificent Seven, as a podcast. So that's kind of has a little bit of momentum right now with kind of a... Actually, Alex, I want to get your take on this. With like a sci-fi genre, did you feel like this took place in like a dystopian future or just kind of like a parallel universe, like present day? What were your thoughts on like the setting?
So there's a really interesting, kind of like when they introduced Robert Ford, who's Anthony Hopkins' character, and he starts talking about... He at one point he mentions that we live in a world where there's no more disease, like we've cured all diseases. I don't know if you caught that.
So that's like 2 months in the future, right?
Right. Once Trump becomes president, then we're all good. Yeah,
no disease.
But so I think the fact that they mentioned that is supposed to hint to us that okay, this is definitely way out in the future, and they've pretty much they're now just using science for fun, which is how something like this. Something like this, Westworld theme park, which is basically what it is, even came around to exist. That's kind of like the feeling I got.
Right. So if you're the sick fuck out there who hasn't seen the pilot episode and you're like, you know what, let's just let these two bros spoil it for me on a very high level, and that's very tough to do with the show because I feel like it is pretty granular and intuitive, and there's gonna be a lot of twists and turns throughout the course of the season. On a really high level, it takes place in a future where, like Alex said, science has advanced well beyond what it is now, and it's basically a modern day, like a theme park where you basically go into this faux Wild West world, and you can do whatever you want. You can kill these robots acting as people in the Wild West. You can have sex with them, which there was a lot of nudity. I'm not complaining about it, but if you're an 8-year-old watching
HBO got their quota
of titties in this.
Yeah, I mean, they just, it's done for the rest of the season, so whatever we get from here on out is just a bonus.
I remember on certain episodes of some HBO shows, they don't always put up the nudity warning in the beginning. And when I was a kid, like 14, when I would see the nudity, I'd be like, oh, here we go. This is a good episode. So basically, humans can go into this. It's, for lack of a better term, a theme park where you can imitate life in the Wild West. And they kind of set up the artificial intelligence that populates the world that humans play with is kind of getting sentient. It's kind of starting to malfunction and act weird. And on top of that, one of the users, played by Ed Harris, who seems like he's like a wily veteran. He's like Dwight Freeney of Westworld. Like, he's just been there forever and he's just almost like bored with it. He's just kind of fed up and he wants to figure out what everything's about. Right. Is there anything you want to add to that on a high level that I'm kind of missing from the general premise?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the Ed Harris character because, right, so on the show itself, they would call him a visitor, right? Which means he's somebody that's like coming in from the outside world and he's coming into town. And then the people that are already there, and when I say people, really they're quote unquote the robots, they're the hosts.
Right.
So that's kind of like the terminology they introduced in the first episode. And Ed Harris, we don't actually right away know which one he is, right, until they do that scene with another great actor, Evan Rachel Wood, who plays Dolores Abernathy. And,
which is the most Western name you could fucking ever think of.
Right. I mean, come on, writers. Like, you got to give me a little bit better than Dolores Abernathy.
I'll guess she marries a Wyatt. I would bet the farm on it.
But yeah, that Ed Harris's character, and obviously Ed Harris, fantastic actor. Just having people like Ed Harris and Anthony Hopkins in TV shows, like the world we live in now, is a crazy one. But
it just legitimizes a show immediately.
Yeah. Like before I knew anything about the premise, I just saw the names and I was like, well, I'm gonna give it a season.
Yeah, I'll give it 13 hours of my life. Okay, fine.
Right.
Take my Sundays.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of want to ask you, like, what do you think about his character specifically? Because he just kind of comes in, and it's very obvious that he's just, he's been there once or twice before, so he's very rich, supposedly, or maybe very good at robbing people in the real world, and is able to get this money to go into this world, because it's, I don't think they ever mention a price, and they probably have a completely different idea of money in whatever time in the future the show takes place, but it's supposed to be incredibly expensive. Like, rich assholes just basically go into this world because they're bored of, like, their life.
Martin Skrillex of the world populate Westworld as users. One guy makes an offhand comment, and, like, his like, nagging wife is like, oh, well, this looks great. It looks real. And he's like, well, it better be for the price we paid. Like, the guy who can't even enjoy his fucking vacation while he's on it the whole time. Yeah, so Ed Harris' character, and obviously, again, this is tough because it's a pilot, and this is a type of show that you can tell that they're really going to flip things on its head, and there's going to be a lot of layers. But yeah, he essentially seems like the type of guy who would participate in The Purge. Like, he's just so rich and essentially now bored with this immersive experience that is Westworld that he's literally just looking for a way to almost spice up the experience in and of itself. So he starts off as is just totally normal. He rapes a robot. And then after that, he basically kind of pronounced...
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. That's true. We weren't in the room. That's what Art Briles would say. We weren't in the room. We don't know. And then he basically kind of decides that his mission is... I couldn't exactly figure out the way that he phrased it, but there's something that he's looking for or something that he's trying to figure out about Westworld. Did you kind of gather more?
Yeah. it was like one of the best lines. He refers to it as a game, and he's like, "There's like a higher level to this game, and I'm going to find out what it is."
That's cool.
Yeah, and it's like, ooh, I like this. Like he's looking at it like a game board, and he's going to try to like go next level.
Yeah,
and he apparently, as part of doing that, he has to like kill that poor dude, that android, like take his head apart
and scalp him.
I don't know if yes, he scalped him, and I don't know if you noticed, like on the underside of the scalp, there was some like crazy design thing, like that. I'm sure that's going to come in at some point.
Yeah, it looked like the maze that you like do on the back of the tricks box.
Right, exactly.
So his character's basically like a veteran of Westworld. He's bored with it. He's like, I'm gonna like up the ante. There's more to this than at face value.
Or at least that's what we think for now. Like it could be something completely different, like 3 episodes from now. But right now, that seems to be kind of where he's headed.
Right. And this kind of ties in. Anthony Hopkins' character, Robert Ford, is essentially the creator and founder of Westworld.
Pretty much, yeah.
And they allude to at one point, so he is not in the actual theme park, but he's kind of in charge of updating the AI and like working on the narratives of the various characters that the humans can interact with. But you do kind of see, and I think this is going to be a big part of the plot twist in it, there is a through line that is going to follow. There's some type of like political unrest within like the company that runs Westworld, or like some sort of corruption and backstabbing and like way more to it than meets the eye that they kind of allude to. And that was one of those crumbs that they laid in the pilot where you're just like, okay, damn it, okay, now I have to watch all 13 episodes of this.
Right, and I thought they did a really good job. Again, it's a pilot episode, so you have to kind of introduce the different characters and what they represent. Like Jeffrey Wright's character, which, by the way, is he okay at acting?
Yeah, is he phenomenal in everything he's in?
He's also been. He was in an HBO Royale show called Boardwalk Empire. Yeah. I don't know if you ever sat around and watched it, but great arc on there. He's just fantastic, and he plays Bernard Lowe, who's basically. I guess he's in charge of like updating the robot software, making them more and more advanced. And he kind of gets introduced in the story where some of them are starting to malfunction and do some weird shit. Like the guy with the milk. Like, what was that guy's problem?
Yeah, this guy's obsession with dairy was, and I mean, he probably has a great calcium intake, but he was like perverting milk as he would kill people. I don't know if you kind of got this same vibe, but Bernard Lowe is the guy who kind of does maintenance on all the AIs. Everyone around him is kind of like, hey, these things are like fucked up more than they should be. I don't know if he was a combination of, or which he was, or maybe a combination of two, just incredibly naive or just hyper-focused on his job. Or I think he also has some kind of, maybe we'll see more of this, but like some sort of blind faith or following to Robert Ford. I kind of got that.
Yeah, I think for sure. Yeah, and if you notice later on in the episode when they have that conversation, and Robert Ford brings up this whole like monologue, Shakespearean monologue. He actually mentions Shakespeare, and it's like I need to go back and watch that again because I feel like it's one of the main themes of the show, where he just kind of talks about, they're basically just starting to bring back some of the characters' story arcs they've had in previous iterations of their and it's like, are they though, or are they just becoming so advanced that you're just using that as an excuse, and they're actually going to become self-aware and realize this is like this whole fake thing they're doing and it's kind of fucked up. So that was kind of interesting. Like I feel like Jeffrey Wright's character and Anthony Hopkins' character are kind of on one side. Meanwhile, you have the woman who was playing kind of like the security chief, I guess.
But she's also like definitely like vulturing for Robert Ford's position in the company. Like literally waiting for him. Like, are you going to die now? Because then I'll take over.
and she's just basically at one point she has a line. She's like, if one of these things malfunctions, then I want us to like find all of the ones that are malfunctioning and stop them right now because this could be bad. And Jeffrey Wright just says something like, "Oh well, there's been like 100 of these things doing that. So you want to take away 100 characters, and then that's where the scene comes in with a huge shootout at the end, where they're able to like take out all these characters as part of also making it part of the plot, sort of, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right. I like how they talk about the not the users. I'm sorry. What are the androids called again? I've already forgotten one episode.
The hosts.
The hosts. I love how they talk about.
What are we talking about?
Yeah. I love how they talk about the host like their fucking iPhones. Like, well, we've updated them, and now they're running a little slower, which is really interesting. I think it's really cool as the premise. They basically set up. There are sort of two narratives that are definitely going to interweave throughout the show, but they are separated. So obviously what's happening in Westworld is very much connected to what's happening with this corporation and the politics and everything that's behind that. But I think there may be episodes where almost at a time they're kind of two stories running, I guess, parallel to each other, which is sort of an interesting framing device for a show like this.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where the whole part of the fact that it's basically, on one side you have a Western show, and on another side you have a sci-fi.
Right.
And
which don't seem like genres that you would be able to mesh at all.
Well, I mean, Cowboys versus Aliens, duh.
Okay, so it's been done once very successfully.
But, so it will be interesting because was it clear to you from the first episode how people and the robots travel to and from Westworld?
No, I didn't get that either.
Quite get it.
So basically, they store all the hosts in a gigantic like bunker underground, and I didn't know if, because obviously they're monitoring Westworld, I didn't know if it was just like even below that bunker, or if it's somehow like the Matrix where they plug like a gas pump into the back of your head and then you like dream when you go there.
That was kind of my take, but I could be totally wrong, because when they show them walking, like when the security lady who you said once Anthony Hopkins' job, and then the British guy who's the writer, who, by the way, that dude needs to chill.
He needs to chill the fuck out.
It's just like
super British snob.
He's just like yelling at everybody. It's like, all right, you're the writer. Like, they could probably just fire you and get somebody else right away.
Yeah.
But they were walking on that kind of ramp up there, which, by the way, prediction number one, somebody's like getting pushed off that ramp and falling like 100 stories to the ground and dying.
100%.
100%. But you notice they were actually out. That thing seems to be built in the desert.
Correct,
right?
Yeah.
So it could be that the whole Westworld is actually out in the real physical world, and they literally just drone these things in and out of there or something.
Yeah, and that begs one other question which you brought up. So the users, the people who go into Westworld, are impervious to being harmed. So like and that's one thing you and I couldn't figure out in the pilot episode either. If a host like James Marsden character, who is an AI, when Ed Harris is like, hey, real quick, I hope you don't mind, I'm gonna force myself upon your girlfriend in this barn over here. James Marsden says in so many words, well, I would prefer you didn't. And he shoots him several times. The host can't hurt them, and so we haven't really been able to figure out how that's the case, and if it's like a real world scenario. Like, have they just armed all the hosts with like blanks or guns that don't work or something?
Yeah.
Or I was kind of confused about that.
Yeah, exactly. That was the part, because if that's the case, then they could just get a real gun from a visitor, and then that would be bad.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that's kind of why I was thinking it had something to do with a more high-level type of sci-fi scenario where, like you said, it's like the Matrix, where they just kind of put them to sleep. Or Inception, since we're on Jonathan Nolan's involved, they just kind of go into this like dream state.
Exactly.
And they're able to basically animate in this world, but do whatever and remember it all when they come back.
Yeah, and I'm sure I was going to say, I'm sure that'll all be made much more apparent and more important to the plot when we find out what the corporation is actually doing behind the scenes.
And we should preface, dude, like this is based on a movie from like the early 70s, and I mean, neither one of us has ever seen it, so we're not really sure how true it stays to the original. If there's stuff that they did in the movie that they're going to end up kind of rehashing. Might take, if you kind of look at the poster and read up a little bit on the original, like that seemed like a pretty honky type of like, early 70s, we're going to try some sci-fi something.
Let's have Dolph Lundgren show up. Why not? Because
this seems to be like, just basically like a HBO's new baby. They're throwing $100 million on it, so
yeah,
they'll probably want it around for a while. So it's probably gonna. One thing that I think is gonna hurt it is it's probably gonna take itself too seriously. Like these shows, you need to have that like ray of humor,
levity thrown in a little bit.
Yeah, just something to kind of like make it a little bit more like lighthearted from time to time, where you could still come back to the seriousness of it all and the ideas they're tackling, but just have some silliness in there. And the first episode didn't really allow for any of that.
It had an oddness and almost like, and this may not be the best analogy, but almost like a Coen Brothers type feel, where like you're feeling an emotion towards a character that like you don't think you should feel. Like when Ed Harris is like brutally beating and about to rape this girl, you're like, man, this is awful. And then you realize for a second, like, well, she's a robot. Like, I don't really know. Should I not care? Like, I don't really understand. It'd basically be like going up to like the It's a Small World ride and like hitting one of the kids. Like, it's not a real kid, but like, you're still kind of fucked up if you do it.
And speaking of kids, like that one family that had the kid with them, it's like, okay, does that seem like the best place to take your kid? Like, hey, we're going to go on vacation.
It's like when you're at a bar and there's like a mom there with her baby and you're like, well, we really want to do shots, but I don't know if your toddler should be, you know what, let's do shots. Let's get around.
And it was also interesting, the kid, like, basically, like, went up to Evan Rachel Wood's character and was like, you're fake, right?
And she's like...
She just kind of malfunctioned for a second. She's like, ha ha ha.
Has anyone told this dumbass kid that would be like walking up to a dog, like, you know you're not a human, right? He's like, I don't even know what any of that means. I'm a fucking animal. All right, so to kind of wrap up what the story was, the way it ends is sort of a cryptic, kind of like foreshadowing. Obviously, the theme of the show is they establish the world, they establish the characters, they establish the premise, and then kind of tease that the AI is starting to... I don't want to say come sentient. I think that may be like being too predictive, but they're starting to malfunction a little bit and sort of like realize that the humans are actual humans and not users. And there's kind of this running theme, this imagery of like they're so unaware of their surroundings that like a fly can literally like land on their eyeball and they have no reaction to it. Mm-hmm. This happens multiple times to the characters, and I honestly just thought it was some type of symbolism for something. And then the very last shot of the pilot episode, Evan Rachel Wood's character, who is one of the artificial intelligent hosts, slaps the fly on her face.
Right.
So how did you perceive that? And then this can kind of segue us both into what we think is going to happen in the rest of the show, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on what did that mean, really.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was really interesting, and it almost kind of winked at what you're saying is, they're becoming self-aware, and this is obviously going to be dangerous for humans going into this world. But I think we both agree on this. Like, we don't want this to become like androids are now intelligent enough to not be able to be controlled like this, and they're going to somehow take over this thing from the inside out, because I think we've seen that too many times.
Right.
So I almost wonder if it just has something to do with, like, specifically the character itself. We didn't see anybody else kill a fly on their face.
Correct.
So if it's just like this one character who was... Evan Rachel Wood was used a ton during the all of the build up to the show, all the advertising, she was in all the trailers. Obviously, she's recognizable enough, but not like an Anthony Hopkins type of a obviously famous actress. Mm-hmm. So I think it was interesting they choose her, and they also mentioned that she's the oldest one. She was like the very first one they built and put in this world. Yeah. So maybe because she's been there so long, she's going to start slowly having like a different type of understanding of what's going on. But I don't know if that necessarily means they're going to turn it into humans versus robots and, just do like a iRobot TV show, which would be terrible. Right. I hope they don't do that. I trust Nolan and Abrams too much not to do that.
Absolutely, and it's kind of tough because the trope, obviously, as you were saying, with artificial intelligence is, I'm sure there are some incarnations of this story that it doesn't happen, but it's always kind of, you always almost have to do the same thing. It's Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, where you create the thing and then it becomes self-aware and turns on you. That's been done a million times, and even though it's been done very creatively, it is sort of played out. I sort of just came up with this theory as you were kind of describing Evan Rachel Wood's character. And because this one has sort of the framing device of this is artificial intelligence, but for recreational purposes, it's not military use or people, trying to basically create something and use it for a purpose that it shouldn't be used. This is like very commonplace in this world. I could maybe see something with like the corporation has purposely programmed these robots to harm the users or hurt the people coming into the game? And what if it ends up becoming like a punishment for like prisoners to go into Westworld or something? All the while Anthony Hopkins sees his creation maybe bastardized, and Jeffrey Wright's character both have to deal with that. I could see something like that, some sort of plot twist where they turn the robot turning on its master premise kind of on its head, which could kind of be a cool take.
That would be pretty cool. And I mean, when it comes to the Nolans, they usually their plots, they just kind of like show you what they show you, and it's exactly what you thought the whole time, right? So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Memento and Inception, pretty straightforward movies.
Yeah, just very obvious where they're going the whole time. There's no tricks or anything, no plot twists or anything like that. So
I'm still waiting for the article headline: "Friend kills other friend over dispute on end of Inception."
Are we sure it's not out there?
It probably is, and it's not even the Onion. It could be someone if you're at home.
Right. And
awesome.
Jonathan Nolan, he wrote a lot of the Chris Nolan scripts, right? They co-wrote them together, so
yeah.
He's clearly very...
I know he had a big role in at least the first two Batman movies Christopher Nolan did, and I believe Memento and maybe even the following as well.
And we should mention, too, his wife, Lisa Joy, is the other main executive producer. Like, I really hope... I heard, there were obviously a lot of delays with this, which kind of had me worried going into the pilot episode that... a lot of times when you hear about TV shows or movies, we have all this issues happening. We had to delay filming. We had to do this. We had to do that. You kind of expect it to show. I didn't think it showed at all, but it makes sense because they're husband and wife. So who knows? She probably was in a bad mood.
They were probably bickering. He forgot their anniversary, and I mean that would delay filming months on its own.
So yeah, I'm very curious to see where they're going to take it. I'm definitely in though, and I think it's pretty obvious HBO's trying they're trying to set up that Game of Thrones replacement that's going to give them their 5 to 10 million viewers on Sunday night.
Bankable.
Because I don't think they would put 100 million in a TV show if that wasn't the case. And Game of Thrones only has 2 more years, I believe. So
yeah, it's coming to an end, and they're trying to set this up. So I guess. We can kind of do similar to how the other bros did for the Magnificent Seven English. How would you rate this pilot on a scale of 1 to 10? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, I guess, what's your anticipation for the rest of the season, and how teased did you feel?
Yeah, so in terms of just the episode by itself, standalone, I said at the beginning that I think it's one of the best pilots I've ever seen. I think it's right up there with the Lost pilot, which Abrams was obviously very involved in that one as well. Just so grandiose, I think is the word you want to use, and all the actors and just the plot and the idea. To me, it's a 10. I don't think you could do TV better than this, and especially for a pilot episode, it was fantastic. I'm probably going to watch it again before the second episode next Sunday. Try to maybe find a 100-inch TV screen to watch it on because it was just so gorgeously shot.
Still not big enough, but
yeah.
You'll have so much space in your fucking apartment to.
And in terms of what my expectation out of 10 for the rest of the season, I'm gonna be a little standoffish. I'm gonna say 8 because again, I feel like there is a way that they take this and go towards the trope of androids versus humans,
right?
And if that happens, I'm going to be really disappointed. But I think that the people involved are too smart to do that, and I don't think HBO would have been like, yeah, let's just do another android and robot show because that's never been done. So I'm just. There's a slight chance that they go that way and they try to make it their own and a little different in their take on it, which would be fine, I guess. But I think overall they probably have a different, completely different thing that we haven't probably even gotten close to touching on so far.
Yeah, I'm going to go pretty similar to you. I'm going to say 9 out of 10 for the pilot. It was incredibly well done visually. Acting was incredible. The storyline, it's tough in a pilot because especially with something like this, you have to create the world so much that to really dive into and start teasing the plot points, there's just not enough time to do it, even in a 73-minute pilot. So I'm going to say 9 out of 10 for that. As far as how intrigued I am, I'm very excited. I'm going to watch this whole thing and be into it the whole way. But after the first episode, I think I'm a little more apprehensive and worried. So I'll say 7 out of 10 going forward, just because I don't know enough about it yet to know for sure that we're going to get away from that. Oh, AI becomes sentient. Even if that is the case, I will not be disappointed. I'll still love the show. But I think I do hold, as unfair as this may be, I hold a Nolan and J.J. Abrams to a higher standard than the average TV runner or show creator. So that could be a 10 out of 10 after the next episode.
For sure. And if I'm going to be honest, like, we're trying to be a little bit critical, but also kind of get super geeky excited about it. I really think when episode 10 ends, I think we're going to talk about it and be like, that just fucking blew my load. Like, that was fucking ridiculously good. Like, what did they even just do? What did I see?
Yeah, these shows, if I know anything about the way that HBO likes to put a show together, it's going to build momentum, and then at a certain point in the middle of the season, it's just going to be a nerdgasm of craziness and plot twists.
And then they're going to take it off air for 2 years while we all die and try to figure out what they're going to do next. But that's fine. Take it off air for 2 years and produce another $100 million 10-episode arc that's going to blow my face afterwards. So.
I think they have like a quota of death threats that they have to receive until they reinstate a show.
It's tied to their formula on their boob quota. Yeah, but they won't. Yeah, it's not released yet, so it's
all interconnected. Boob quota, death threats. It's all a part of this. Guys, that's going to do it for the this quick lift of Westworld pilot review. That's Alex English. I am Jeff Hornacek. We appreciate you guys listening to us. Don't forget to follow us on all of our platforms on iTunes. Bro Force Squad, 3 words. BroForceSquad.com is our website. We're still working on the Pinterest, as English said last week. I know there's some good recipes we want to pin up there.
We are on Tinder.
We're definitely on Tinder, yeah. Super like us. I heard that's a thing. Twitter at Broforce Squad, any social media platform, Facebook.
Thanks for the pokes, by the way, on Facebook. That was nice.
Yeah, thanks for the pokes. Just get out of our inbox, though. It's a little creepy, like the stuff you're sending us.
That's too much.
It's flattering, but again, for Alex English, I'm Jeff Hornacek. Thank you guys so much, and we look forward to speaking with you next time. Take care.
Peace.